Hello everyone, my name is PJ and welcome to The Void. What is The Void? Well, it's this place. A vast emptiness all my own in which I can do or make anything I want in a snap.
Oh wait, what? Where am I?
Today I'm gonna be trying something a bit different. I'm gonna review 6 games in one video. The Crash Bandicoot trilogy and its insane remake. Crash Bandicoot was one of the first PS1 games released in the West, and it's apparently made quite a splash. Crash was the primary PS1 mascot for a time, at least until the trilogy ended and the games that came after lowering in quality, Crash Team Racing being the exception. Fast forward to just a few years ago when all 3 games were remade for the PS4. While Crash 3 was left almost completely untouched, many improvements were made to the first 2 games, which I'm happy about. When I was a kid, the only Crash game I'd played was the third one, Warped. Even though it was too hard for me to complete 100% at first, I still ranked it as one of my favorite PS1 games of all time, a notion I hold to this day. Later I played the first 2 games and, well, I wasn't impressed. At all. I think most people would agree that 1 and 2 are inferior to 3. The way this video will work is I'll go over my usual 5 categories, talking about all 3 games and their remakes and giving them separate scores. But it'd be annoying and confusing displaying 6 different scores over and over, so I'm going to give us all a break and just announce them at the end. And even though none of the games have any real plot twists, I will still put a spoiler warning here. First, the graphics. For PS1 games, the Crash trilogy didn't look all that bad. The characters were low poly and didn't really have textures apart from base colors and gradients, but they were very well animated. Crash characters have cartoony designs, so this is to be expected. Since these are the kind of games where you die a lot, like Dragon's Lair or Thayer's Quest, it's nice to see all the work they put into Crash's many death animations. He gets crushed, electrocuted, eaten, inflated, turned into an angel, bisected, incinerated, and more. Some of these death animations were cut from the remakes, probably for time, or maybe they just forgot about them. I don't know. There are panoramic backgrounds, plus details in the level design that I like to call the side grounds. More on that later. The remake is absolutely stunning. I remember having this as my desktop wallpaper in the weeks leading up to its release. The character designs are faithful to the original, though they changed Tawna's outfit ever so slightly, and it's much easier to tell what many objects and enemies are supposed to be. The games never fail to be colorful, vibrant, and pleasing to look at. The PS1 graphics were definitely outshined by certain other games at the time that I can think of, but that doesn't make them bad. All 6 games are getting a point for graphics. Second, the music. I've always loved the music of Crash 3. Warped has some very memorable songs, but I don't feel that way about the first 2 games. Even after beating each one 4 times, I can only recall from memory 2 songs from each game. That's how forgettable they are for me. But the music of those games isn't bad, it's just not spectacular. So I'm giving a point to Warped, no points to the first 2, and I'm gonna do a second video about my favorite songs from the trilogy. Third, gameplay. Crash Bandicoot was among one of the first 3D platformers, and it used a unique style that almost no other games use, in that you mainly walk forward instead of all around or to the right. There are some levels where you do that, but the majority are the ones where you walk forward, so much so that some refer to this as Crash Bandicoot syndrome, a style that Final Fantasy X is noted for using. Apart from that, it's a fairly typical platformer, akin to Mario. You've got crates in place of blocks, some of which even have question marks on them, power-ups that let you take extra hits or become invincible for a time, and thousands of collectibles that give you extra lives when you get 100 of them, not to mention the extra lives themselves. These games may be notoriously hard, but they give you so many extra lives and checkpoints that you can only blame yourself if you hit game over. And as they say in tabletops, if the players blame themselves for their own deaths, the GM wins. But there's more to the games than just platforming. There are vehicle stages, underwater stages, and of course the extremely easy bosses that the series is also known for. I remember Crash Bandicoot Warped and Bugs Bunny Lost in Time being the games that taught me how to use the protagonist's shadow to aim where they're going to land, and being frustrated ever since whenever 3D platformers don't have that feature. The second and third games have hubs and let you choose what order to play the levels in, but the first game had a world map where you walk between the stages in an almost completely straight line. It was very inconvenient when you needed to backtrack, somewhat less so in the second game. Thankfully, the remake added a shortcut to the first game that connects the two ends of the map. Every game has a secret ending that can only be obtained by collecting all of the gems. The way to get a gem is very simple. Break every single breakable crate in a level before reaching the goal. Most of the time, this is a fun and interesting challenge that often involves discovering secrets or using an alternate entrance to the level. But in the original Crash 1, even if you break all the boxes, you forfeit the gem if you die even once. And in a game that gives you dozens of extra lives because it knows how hard it is, this is pretty unforgiving. Even more so that it doesn't even have a box counter. You won't know if you've missed any until after you've already beaten the level, so you can't go back and look for the ones you missed. Crash 3 introduced a new time trial mode where you can earn relics by beating the stages as quickly as possible. In that game, relics were used to unlock more bonus stages, as well as counting toward your completion percentage. The remakes of Crash 1 and 2 also added time trials, though those were mostly just for fun. I don't have anything against these addicting challenges, but it really bugs me how they have an option to restart the level from the menu, but regular gameplay doesn't. It makes trying to get the gem in the motorcycle stages very frustrating until you unlock the time trial. So for gameplay, I'm deducting a point from the original Crash 1, then giving a point to its remake and the other two games. They are fun as hell. Fourth, story. Dr. Neo Cortex has discovered the secret to rapidly evolving and brainwashing animals. And for some reason, the other scientists of the world think he's an idiot. So he rightfully decides to get revenge on them all by building an army of furries to take over the world with. But the strongest of his experiments is driven insane by the still experimental procedures and turns on Cortex, deciding to wreck his plans and free his girlfriend, who is apparently resistant to the brainwashing. After stopping Cortex in the first game, he gets the idea to use crystals to power his brainwashing machine. But since Crash stopped his army, he decides to trick Crash into gathering them for him. And since Crash is, as we've established, insane, he falls for it. Although one could argue that he simply has no choice since he's trapped in this surreal hub world. This game introduced the cute as a button Coco Bandicoot, Crash's sister, who's just... Here now, where'd you come from? Doesn't matter, don't worry about it. She's a computer genius whose IQ rivals that of Cortex. So, you know, like Tails is to Eggman. So it's usually up to her to set Crash on the path to victory. Crash 2 was also the first game to make a big deal out of the gems. Once you've obtained one, you are contacted by Cortex's former sidekick, Embryo, who's on your side now for some reason. He explains in his own words that collecting all the gems is the only real way to stop Cortex and get the true ending. It's actually kind of fascinating that the game started going this route because the secret ending in the first game isn't canon. The third game introduces a totally new major antagonist, an evil witch doctor mask named Uka Uka, the twin brother of the invincibility power-up, whose name is Aku Aku. Not that anyone cared about him before Crash 3, but Uka Uka shows up and, whoa, plot twist, turns out he's Cortex's boss. But how is he commanding Cortex if he was sealed away? And how is he influencing Cortex at all while sealed? And if he has the ability to do so while sealed, why is him being free now a threat? If these questions are ever explained, it's not until after the trilogy. The games try to have lore behind all the various boss characters, but it's all in the form of one-liners and gags that aren't relevant at all and just feel disjointed. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Crash 3. Anyway, the third game is about time travel. The first took place on just a few tribal islands, and the second took place all over the world, but the third takes place throughout various eras, so it has the widest variety of settings. The plot this time is to, you guessed it, gather the crystals, gather the gems, and beat up Cortex again. That's it. I hate to say it, but these stories are kind of a mess. There's never much tension, and the sparse character development seems to just happen. The second game in particular tries to build up this big reveal that, oops, Cortex is actually the villain, even though it's spoiled for you in the opening cutscene. Gotta take away a point for all 6 games, I'm sorry. Fifth, presentation. In both versions of each game, the voice acting is pretty damn good. Cortex is a likable and relatable mad scientist who's more often aggravated and exasperated than maniacal or intimidating.
No, Crash. To save the world, I need crystals. Crystals! One more time. They look like this. Crystals, Crash.
Aku Aku's got a voice like Morgan Freeman.
Well done, children. By defeating Tiny, you have unlocked the gate to the next time travel area.
And Debbie Derryberry pulls out Coco's cute and kooky side very well. Much better than how Coco's original VA sounded.
Crash! My battery is fried. Make yourself useful, big brother, and bring an extra battery for me.
As for Crash, he really doesn't talk often, but you will hear him scream, "Whoa!" during his many deaths. There are two things I don't like about the new voice acting, however. Engine doesn't have the same metallic filter to his voice.
How do you expect to retrieve them when we don't have any Earthbound operatives left?
How do you expect to retrieve them when we don't have any Earthbound operatives left?
And Uka Uka is now more difficult to understand.
Yes, it is true. The Bandicoot has brought all the crystals and all the gems to me. Ultimate power is mine.
The manuals for the original games are typical for PS1 titles. Color sometimes, black and white in others. These are where you learn the meat of the lore so the games don't get bogged down with excessive cutscenes. And while the remakes didn't come with a manual, they did come with two new and incredibly challenging levels. One last thing I want to mention that really bugs me is the choreography of Crash 3's cutscenes. In the original Crash 3, Entropy was revealed by having this terrifying silhouette walking toward you before stepping into the light. But the remake just has him arrive via a portal. I thought about this one a lot and even did some math, and I've decided to give a point to the original Crashes 1 and 3, deduct a point from the remake of 3, and leave the others unchanged. And now for the miscellaneous stuff. Saving and loading can cause lots of problems, especially in the remakes where save and load are assigned to face buttons. One slip up and you'll load a file instead of saving over it. Saving in Crash 1 is especially annoying. You have to complete a bonus level or get a gem or a key in order to save, and even if you do, there's a chance it will only save some of your progress. There's a password system, but neither of these are good ideas on a console that uses memory cards, and they don't ask for confirmation on whether or not you want to quit in any of the games. In my Let's Play of Crash 3, I accidentally quit out of the game and lost 3 hours of progress. My fault for not saving more often, but there are still preventative measures that could have been taken for this sort of thing, like how the remakes include an autosave slot, which cancels out the bullshit face button stuff. So -1 for the originals. Nitro Box's randomly bouncing is already unfair in a precision platformer, but bouncing as high as they do is just stupid. -1 for Crashes 2 and 3. Crash 3 has this cool feature when you unlock power-ups after beating bosses. You get a bazooka, can run faster, double jump, but the tornado spin is problematic. Once you get it, it changes the mechanics of your basic attack and can be triggered accidentally, and once you start spinning, you can't stop until it's over. There should really be a way to cancel the spin. It's cost me a great many lives, but it's just one downside to a great mechanic, so I'm still gonna give it a point. In every game, there are times where you are forced to move toward the camera instead of away from it, such as during the chase sequences. These levels, while fun, are horrendous because you can't see where you're going unless you kind of inch along, which is difficult when being chased. You'll either need to memorize the layout or have great reflexes to beat these. They wouldn't be so bad if they just pulled the camera back more. -1 for every game. And finally, Coco Bandicoot. Originally, Coco was only playable in Crash 3, where she had a couple vehicle stages and a boss all to herself, which, by the way, is the best boss in the series. You're fighting a giant robot in outer space, which transforms into a UFO, and you and the boss have totally different health mechanics, and then a tiger comes out and mounts you with his H.O. Geiger dick, and the remakes of 1 and 2 added her as a playable character, pretending that she's using the time machine from 3 to help out Crash. For this reason, Coco isn't available for the bosses in 1 and 2, which I can kind of understand, but then why can't I play as her for the hog riding stages? She has riding animations for Pura, so why not use those for Polar and the Hog? You also can't use her for the motorcycle or scuba diving levels. I mean, I get it. Crash is supposed to be the hero, and he should get more levels. But if he's so important, why can't I play as him in Coco's levels? Again, why can't Crash ride Pura or the jet ski? These unexplained inconsistencies annoy me, but I won't deduct any points because I do like the feature. though I will add a point to 3 just for having the widest variety of level types for both characters. Alright, the tallies have been tallied. Let's see what we got. Crashes 1 and 2 each get a 3 out of 10. I'm gonna be honest, I've never liked the first 2 games all that much. The remake of Crash 2 is only slightly better than the original, so it gets a 4 out of 10. The remake of Crash 1, on the other hand, is actually pretty decent now with a 5 out of 10. The adjustments they made to the gameplay, as well as the new features, make it the only enjoyable version for me. I 105%ed the remake of Crash 1 in one 5-hour sitting. That's how much better and more fun it's become. But none of them hold a candle to my baby, Crash 3, with a 7 out of 10 on PS1 and a 6 out of 10 on PS4. Wide level variety, power-ups, cool bosses, great music. You can't go wrong with Crash 3. And even though I considered the original to be objectively better, I'm still gonna play the remake when I'm in a Crash mood, just because you can play as Coco in more levels. If you like Crash Bandicoot, or if this video got you interested, you won't want to miss out on some of the great fan projects people have made. There's the Crash Does a Thing cartoon, or you can follow Kempferzero on DeviantArt, who makes a lot of really good Crash art, mostly of the girls. Thank you all so much for watching my video. Until next time, I'll be here, in the darkness, quietly awaiting your return.